Welcome to the Thyroidless Life podcast with me, Dr. Rebecca Warren. This podcast is for you if you've been diagnosed with a thyroid disorder, think you might have a thyroid disorder, or are healing after thyroidectomy. I'm doing this podcast because of my own personal health journey of being diagnosed with thyroid cancer, getting my thyroid cut out, getting high-dose radiation, and being left with no answers when my health started to deteriorate quickly. It wasn't until I drew a line in the sand that my health transformed, and now I've dedicated my life to sharing this information so others don't have to go down that same path. My hope is that you never feel alone on your health journey and that you understand how incredible your body is, that it's not working against you, it's working with you, and it wants to be well. We are back in to this season of the Thyroidless Life podcast. I'm so excited to be back. I know I'm not the only one with the craziness of the holidays. And for us, it was like the first Christmas that we have like 3 kids, like Gideon turned 1 and then all the school activities and all of that. But I'm just really excited. We had some really awesome things happen at the end of the year. A lot of new members in my thyroid inner community that I'm so excited about. And I'm excited to be back here doing this episode. I think this episode is going to be a good one. Let me give a disclaimer though. If you're listening to this, you're not going to see this, but if you're watching it, I have remnants of green nail polish. My daughter gave me a manicure with non-toxic nail polish, and that means it doesn't last. So if you're like, you see me, I am Hispanic. I talk with my hands. So if you see me moving around and you're like, what is on her nails? That's what that is. Don't judge my manicure. But um, but going back to what I was going to say about today's episode, I I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've worked with a lot of people within my thyroid inner circle community and my one-on-one coaching clients that are part of my intensive coaching program. And there's these things that keep popping up, and I see it in my Facebook group as well. It's, the Healing After Thyroidectomy group. It's a little bit harder to guide people one-on-one just because, uh, you know, we're not connected beyond what you're posting on there. But I'm able to guide people a little bit more, not a little bit, a whole lot more within my community and one-on-one. And there's these things that keep popping up that I see over and over again. I feel like I repeat myself a lot. And sometimes in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I say the same things over and over again. But to those that are hearing the message, it's not that I'm saying it over and over again. Like for some people, it's the first time they've ever heard it. For other people, they may have heard me, they may have listened to my podcasts and watched videos, and they may have heard me talk about it 10 times, but each time it's like new because it's new concepts, it's a new idea, it requires a new type of action. And I say all that because there are things that keep popping up that in my head frustrates me because I'm like, man, if only if only you could realize how important this one thing is. If only you could realize how important it is to do this thing or to ask this question or to start having these types of thoughts, your health can completely transform. But we get stuck. And I was like this too, right? Like I help women now. But again, always as a reminder, I was on this path as well, like healing and thyroid hormone and sex hormone and gut healing and all this stuff. But there's things that we do and there's things that we get stuck in that sabotage our ability to heal. And so I want to address a few of those things right now, because now that we're into the new year, this is an opportunity. I love the new year. I love New Year's Eve. I love New Year's. Um, I love it because it's such a just massive, like culturally, everyone together is walking into this new start. I love the idea of just starting new and fresh and I like the celebration of that. And so now that we're into 2024, if there are any goals when it comes to your sex hormones or your thyroid hormones that you want to achieve, like I'm not talking about New Year's resolutions. I never do New Year's resolutions, but I always change my thoughts. I always think like, okay, whatever I was struggling with, whatever, I didn't do, whatever I wanted to work on, it's okay. We're just going to keep on going. We're starting new. And you can do this every day, right? You can wake up every day and be like, okay, starting new. Yesterday's yesterday, today is today. But I love that New Year's can represent that on a greater scale for you. So as we're going into the New Year's, I want to do this episode because you've got to get this crap taken care of. You've got to change how you view these things, how you talk about these things, what you think is possible for you, or you're just going to get stuck in the same place over and over again. And so one of the things that I love about my Thyroid Inner Circle community, what I love is that in there as a group, we kind of address the major foundational things that need to be addressed, whether it's nutrition, whether it's labs, whether it's, if they don't have a thyroid, whether it's medication, we address that so that that can go out of the way. And if they need deeper help, then we can go deeper. That's what I love about my community is that we're going to get all of this foundational stuff taken care of so that if you need my help one-on-one, we can really go deep without going over that, foundational. Everyone really needs to understand this type of stuff. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The foundational things, the things that I keep hearing over and over again that really need to be shut down, that need to be addressed, that needs to change so that you can achieve the health you're looking for, especially when it comes to thyroid hormones and healing after thyroidectomy. Okay, so let's go ahead. Number one, I don't care if your doctor doesn't want to do full thyroid labs. If you want to get well, you need to get full thyroid labs. Plain, plain and simple. Full, complete thyroid labs. TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, thyroid antibodies. I also have that free ebook that you can go to my website, drrebeccawarren.com. I'll put a link in the show notes where I talk about full a wellness panel and what that all includes. Like over and over again, I hear and see people say, well, my doctor wouldn't order that. Or they'll go in and you have this conversation with your doctor about wanting these labs because you know something is wrong, because you want answers, because there are reasons to get these labs done. And then when you leave, the doctor doesn't do it, which I think is so highly disrespectful. Okay. You hire a doctor, not just for their clinical expertise and their knowledge, it's that you guys can do informed decision making, shared decision making together. Because who is being quote unquote treated? You are. Who is an expert of what feels right, what doesn't feel right, if you're feeling off, if you need more, if you need less? You are. So the fact that for a lot of you guys, I just had this happen. One of my newest one on one intensive coaching clients went in and I assumed she had a blood sugar issue. Like, I'm like, oh, I think there's an insulin issue here. We need to get this tested. Went in, the doctor didn't do it. Even though, she talked to them, gave them the list, just decided not to do it. So we had to order the missing labs, and guess what was there? She's a ticking time bomb with the blood sugar, but the doctor would not do. I think that's just so wrong. And I've shared this before a lot because I'm very passionate about this is that the way women are treated within our medical system is atrocious. From the minute we're born throughout our whole entire life, we have studies, we have data. There's a book on this, an incredible book that came out not too long ago about how biased studies and research and these types of systems are to women and how I know it sucks. And I know it sucks to think that you have to go in and like fight this way to get proper care, but that's where we're at right now. And especially, I know I have listeners from all over the world. The more and more I talk to people in some other countries, though, like, in England and um, New Zealand, Australia, like they're kind of starting to have like these same types of issues as well, themselves with their healthcare. You have to understand that like if you are not speaking up, like if you go through that system silent, if you go through that system knowing that things are wrong, knowing that you've been, more educated, you're learning more, you're listening to my podcast, you're exposed to all these things. If you go in through that system without asking questions and challenging those that are supposed to be there to help you, then you're going to end up like everyone else. And the statistics, at least here in America, is horrendous, especially for women within our medical system. Okay. So, that being said, you deserve to be heard. You deserve to get what you need. And if not, stop going to the same person if you are not getting better. Ideally, you should need your doctor less. Ideally, you shouldn't be with all these symptoms, having to go back looking for answers and not getting it. Now, it's a different situation if there's something going on and the doctor's trying to like uncover it with you. But for a lot of the women, I mean, guys, I've been doing this for over 10 plus years. This is the same conversation I've had for 10 plus years with women, telling them, like, no, you are right. There is something wrong. Look, we just did a Dutch test. So now you can see what was happening with your sex hormones. You were right about that. Or look, we just did complete a thyroid panel. Yeah, your free T3 is completely depleted and your reverse T3 is through the roof. And I have sat across so many women that when they sit there, two different big reactions I've gotten throughout the years when they sit down and go through their like test results with me. Number one, either I get women that are in tears, where their eyes are welling up, where they're just kind of sitting there like, I knew something was wrong. Like I knew it. And they told me, no, this is normal, but I knew something was wrong, right? I get that. Or I get women that sit there and are just like, uh, that was a lot of information. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I'll tell them, listen, look at what's going on with this system here and how you were converting your thyroid hormones and look at your estrogen clearance and all of this. And they sit there like, so they went from doctor visits where they couldn't find anything. And then they sit down with me and they're like, oh, oh my gosh, everything's wrong. And it's like, well, yeah, look at your history. Even if people like, I see a lot of people with symptoms, but I see a lot of women that think they're not too bad. Like they don't feel too bad. And I always give this example, and I think it's because I have a 7-year-old boy. But I always give the example of like, when you're in a room and someone toots, passes gas, you smell it, but you in there and for a while, so you get used to it. And now you've been in a room that completely stinks, but you don't even realize it anymore. That's what I find for a lot of women, and they don't realize that. They've been dealing with hormones being off for years, maybe even decades. So they're like, well, yeah, maybe I have some hot flashes, or I mean, yeah, maybe like like my periods are painful, but they're regular. Like we can write off things because we're still getting things done. We're still getting the kids out the door in the morning. We're still going to work. But that doesn't mean just because you get it done doesn't mean you should be doing all of that because you're running on fumes. And for a lot of these women, it's not until we kind of dig deeper and then we start fixing things where things like this fog starts lifting. My favorite thing ever is when women start to get better and it's not like, oh, weight loss or hair. It's like, oh my gosh, Dr. Rebecca, my period came and I didn't feel like I wanted to murder my husband. Or Dr. Rebecca, like I went all day today without crashing, or I went all day today without feeling anxious or depressed, or without feeling like, I need a nap, you know. But the thing is, if we continue to go over and over again to the same types of doctors that are doing the same incomplete testing, that are kind of stuck in very outdated ways, and we still have symptoms and we still have stuff going on. I mean, that's insanity. What's that quote? Like insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And I think like the biggest thing I want for you to get out of this is like is a voice, that says like, no, I'm not okay with this. I recently had someone in one of my groups, um, that was having some symptoms, having some issues, and like is kind of like I think it was red flags of her having too much T3. This was post thyroidectomy, so they don't have a thyroid, they're on meds. And she has all these symptoms, heart palpitations, like just feeling awful and crummy. And I was like, okay, what's your free T3? Well, my doctor says it's not important anymore. Not important. Too much free T3 is a big red flag. Like having all these heart palpitations, that's the first place you should look. Like it revs up all of that system. So here's someone that has these symptoms. And she's like, well, why would my doctor do that? I don't know why your doctor would do that. I literally have no idea. Is it because they just don't know? Maybe. We do know, I think it was out of New England Journal of Medicine. They did a study to see how long it takes for studies to be applied into clinical practice, an average of 17 to 20 years before, like, hey, we have the study that proves that this is a better way of doing things. And then actually applying it can be over 2 decades. I don't know. Is it because maybe your doctor has an ego and doesn't like to think that a patient knows more than them? That's a possibility. I've encountered a lot of doctors like that. I saw a surgeon on social media that cuts out thyroid for a living post a mug that says, don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. Like, I can't even believe he's like boasting about that because a Google search can give you studies, can give you interviews, can give you breakdown, can give you other people that are getting better treatment with other doctors that are trying different things. Like, and you get to learn from them. Google gives you my podcast, gives you my communities that you can be a part of and you can learn and you can see people getting better. And this idea that, like, God, like, don't ask questions, don't bring this up. If you guys have a doctor like that, why? Why are you there? Like, find someone new. And yes, I have someone in my community. I'm so excited. She posted right, I think in December, she came to see me. And one thing that I do with people that are healing post thyroidectomy is I try to make sure, especially I have a lot of people that are newly getting their thyroid removed, which that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But what I try to do is I want to set you up for success from the beginning. Because if you don't know it, like if you read about people that are living after thyroidectomy, it sounds horrible because it is. Because we have a lot of, doctors within that medical system that don't know how to work with someone without a thyroid and treating someone as if living without a thyroid is the same as living with a sick thyroid, which it's not. And one of the things I try to do is try to set you up for success from the beginning, like start teaching you the labs and the different medication options and how to start having conversations and how to be really involved. But I have someone that started in my community like a year or so ago, and I kept telling her, like, you feel fine now, but you got to start preparing that your body's going to start shifting. You need to have these levels of free T4, these levels of free T3. And at first, it was really disheartening for her because her practitioner her prescribing practitioner was not willing to work with any other type of meds to help her, to support her healing, to support her balance. And it was kind of like depressing for her because it was like, it's so hard to find someone. And I kept coaching her. This is how you find someone. This is how you ask these questions. And she finally found someone who was like, yeah, let's do this, and put her on what she needed to be on. And her levels for the first time are starting to get into like good levels. And that's exciting, especially when you feel like, oh no, like I'm not getting the help I need. It is possible. And I always share, like, when it comes to a prescribing provider, like, it can be, if you go to someone and she's on the corner and she, that's where her practice is, and she went to a school and was taught by a professor that was very knowledgeable about up-to-date research on thyroid, if she's up to date on the research, if someone from Armor Thyroid visits her and teaches her in a way, and she's going to recommend something to you versus, like, let's say a couple blocks down, there's a guy who's only ever done Synthroid, who only's ever looked at Synthroid, who learned something in medical school like 4 decades ago, and he's just going to practice the same way. You're going to get different recommendations there. So I don't know where this thing happened where, like, I see it a lot too with like women that get pregnant. They just kind of just go to whoever OBGYN. And I'm like, I mean, their experience, their passions, where they were educated, what they've done affects the care you're going to get. So you need to align yourself with someone that's going to give you the care that you're looking for and that you can walk in and do shared decision making. You've got to be able to ask questions. You've got to be able to feel comfortable to speak your mind and receive the help that you deserve. So right off the bat, like, I mean, I spent all this time talking about labs because I am just still so shocked, just shocked that this is still not happening for people with thyroid issues, but especially for people healing after thyroidectomy. I met with someone recently from my community that was about to go through the surgery. And, I let her know and I said, listen, you have yet this entire time have had complete thyroid labs. I was shocked. Maybe I think all she had was TSH, maybe antibodies at some point. I'm like, and this can be a recipe for disaster post thyroidectomy. Because if you're not getting a complete look at what all the levels are, and if your body's going into stress or not, or what's going on there, man, you can really crash and burn. And then it makes you feel when the doctor's only testing TSH and it looks fine, it makes it feel like maybe it's all in your head. Maybe you're not fasting hard enough. Maybe you're not working out hard enough. Maybe it's just you. Maybe it's your depression and anxiety. And that's just, maybe it's just your body. Your body's just failed you, which like 9 times out of 10 in all my years of helping women, that is false. 9 times out of 10, I can identify something. Maybe that last 10, we had to dig deeper. It was a lot harder to identify what that kind of dysfunction is. But you have to understand that it's not a question of if I should do this, is you must do this, especially if you have a history of thyroid issue and especially if you've had your thyroid removed. Period. I the last 3 women that have come in joined my intensive coaching, like my one-on-one coaching. None of them had complete labs and they've had issues. None of them. That is not okay. That is not okay for you and you should not stand by that. So in 2024, it's time to start speaking up and asking for the things that you deserve. And if you don't get it, you move on. Listen, I live in the South. I get it. Some doctors, but they're so nice. Great. Awesome. I'm glad they're nice. But your body's slowly dying on the inside. You're struggling mentally, physically. You may know it, you may not know it, and it's just not enough. You've got to get those labs. You've got to get those stinking labs. And especially for those of you guys that have a thyroid and might have like a thyroid issue or hypothyroidism or something going on there, you got to know your thyroid antibodies. That's the second thing, right? That I've touched on this, but I've got to reiterate this. Like having thyroid antibodies present means you have an active autoimmune disorder, which means you have an immune system dysregulation occurring. And I have people that go and get their thyroid cut out or get things done to their thyroid because they have it, right? They have that going on. And the doctor's just like, whatever. Like you can't look at that like that anymore. Your goal is to see that brought down. Now, along with this conversation about thyroid antibodies, I want to address something about nutrition. Um, and especially if you've gone into kind of the healthy eating world and read blogs and if you've done autoimmune protocols and all of this, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. If you have to completely eliminate, always like pretty big food groups to be decently okay, then the healing's not done. And this can be pretty controversial within like, the carnivore world or like the autoimmune paleo world and all these things. And obviously, I'm not telling you I want you to eat all this like gluten all day, every day after you've healed your gut and all of this because bread and how it's grown and how it's sprayed and how it's genetically modified, it's not the same as it was thousands of years ago. Period. It's just not. But what I found, I'll never forget, there's someone that came to see me here that was having some active thyroid issues. And she was eating a certain way. It's a way of eating. I think it can be really beneficial, but people do it. I think it was the GAPS. GAPS can be really beneficial, especially for children. It's very strict, um, but it can be a good tool if you're also combining it with detoxing and healing. And the goal should be to reintroduce things, right? But I'll never forget, like, I'm sitting across this woman who was telling me that she knows what her issue is. And her issue is um, that she just likes eating corn tortillas. It's non-GMO organic, but sometimes she'll eat it. And she knows that's just what's, killing her. And I was like, listen, I don't want you to eat corn all day, every day. But you're telling me that you can never eat organic, non GMO corn tortillas, or else your thyroid's just going to crash and burn. Like, there's just no way. There's just no way. A lot of you guys have done these food allergy tests and you're like, I can't have asparagus and artichokes and almonds ever for the rest of my life. No, ma'am. That is not what that means at all. It means that, yes, you're having an inflammatory reaction to a lot of different types of food, but the goal should be what? Heal your gut, identify gut dysregulation, leaky gut, heal the gut, support the immune system, then reintroduce because you shouldn't avoid artichokes. Like, I couldn't imagine living in a world where, you know, you can't have corn chips or else you're scared you're gonna like your thyroid autoimmunity is gonna flare up, right? And it's non-GMO organic. So that's when it really started hitting me. And she actually chose not to work with me because I was like, that's not correct. There's something deeper. There's something triggering that. But she was so set that she has to eat in this very restrictive way. She had to do things this way. And that's not how it should be, right? Like I always teach about food. And I know you guys hear a lot about like food is medicine. And I get that saying, like, okay, food is medicine. Like, especially when we live in a world where like pills never really heal anything. They help us manage symptoms, they help us manage, right? And this is coming from someone that's missing a thyroid. Like, the thyroid hormones isn't healing me, it's a necessity now, but your thyroid hormones are not healing you. They're just giving you hormones, right? But food isn't medicine, right? The healing doesn't come from within the food. The healing comes with what your body does with that food. The healing comes within your body, doesn't come from food. And that's why I love fasting right now because fasting shows you because I'll have people that like will eat a certain way and they lose weight. So they get very stuck in that way of eating, or they might eat like in a carnivore way or low FODMAP and their gut is like no longer bloated. So they get very scared to step away from that way of eating. But if you could understand that it's your body that does the healing, that's why I love fasting. Because when you remove everything, all supplements, all food, when you, in the absence of all of that, what does your body do? It heals. It heals in the absence of all of that. So the healing is already in you. The doctor is already in you, right? Where does nutrition come into play? Nutrition is a necessity, right? How we feel our bodies, we have to feel our bodies, plain and simple. We have to feel our bodies. So, how are we going to fuel it, right? When you eliminate nourishing foods, when you eliminate amino acids, essential amino acids, when you restrict essential fatty acids, your body cannot do what it's created to do, especially when you're doing it chronically. But when you come in and you reintroduce those things, your body's like, this is what I needed. This is foundational. Now that I have this, I'm no longer stressed and I can do what? I can heal. So it's not that you went keto, that you lost all this weight and you're starting to feel better. It's that you were chronically in a state of eating tons of carbs, especially processed carbs, and your body had not ever become fat adapted. So now that you've devoted a season to eliminating all these processed foods and you went into being fat adapted, your body's able to utilize those ketones and shift into a different metabolic state that it has not been able to be in. And so your body goes into that state and it's able to heal, it's able to respond, it's able to balance hormones and reset the metabolism. But guess what? If you stay chronically in that state of high fat, you know what's eventually going to happen? Your body's going to be like, okay, hold up. It's time to diversify. It's time to change things up. We don't want to be chronically the same. We're meant for diversity. We're meant to diversify our macros, our workouts, our movement. We live to adapt. So guess what? If you stay chronically in keto, if you stay chronically in low carb, you're going to have issues there too. But again, a lot of people feel like they need to stay there because they don't do it in a way that's healing. They'll eat a lot of rancid fats, a lot of more inflammatory food. So they lose weight. But if they come off of it, the weight comes back or issues come back. Well, no, eat in a very nourishing. And, I say paleo because it's like a very marketable word, but really like whole foods, nourishing as close to the earth as possible that you can get. So even if I say paleo, I'm not saying like strict paleo. Like my sister, I remember years ago, I would tell her about it and she's like, well, paleo is this and that. No, 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 no. Like what it means is just going back to less artificial ingredients, less processed foods, going back to the way animals are supposed to raise and be outside and move and all of that good things. So that's what we're doing. In my inner circle community, we're going into nutrition deeper this month and next month. So if you're interested in that, check out drrebeccawarren.com. We're on a wait list right now, but the doors will open again here in the next few weeks. If you are interested, check that out. Or in the next few months, just join the wait list if you want to work with me, you want to check out my community. So going back to what I was saying, when it comes to that, if you have to stay in the same way, obviously, if you're eating inflammatory foods over and over again, it's going to disrupt healing. But you have to be able to diversify your food, which means this: if our body wasn't able to handle stressors, we would be dead as a human species. Okay. We should be able to encounter stressors. And in fact, stressors make us stronger, being able to adapt to those stressors. So what does that mean? Like, obviously, I don't want you to eat a greasy processed pizza every single week. Sorry, guys. I'm not going to be for that. But you and your husband are want to take an anniversary trip to New York City, and you're in New York City. Pizza and bagels, like if you can't go on a Saturday and have pizza and bagels because you're gonna crash and burn, you're gonna be swollen, you're gonna be like bloated and all this stuff, and like you should be able to go there and enjoy yourself and then come back and get back on track to your nourishing way of eating. It's really important because I have found a lot of women being very, very restrictive chronically. And when you are very restrictive chronically, then you miss out on a lot of vital nutrients that your body needs, amino acids, fatty acids. I I have seen women, a lot of my older clients who have been so restrictive for so long that now we're seeing all these markers in our labs. Like your thyroid will shut down, the conversion will decrease when you're too restrictive. You will not find a good balance with your thyroid hormones, your sex hormones, your adrenals. It's all affected. So, yeah, in order sometimes to heal the gut and to get the thyroid on a immunity under control, in order to heal your hormones post thyroidectomy, you will have to make some changes. You might have to kind of take a break with these types of foods, but you're going to replace it with these types of foods. You might need to go into a healing state, a healing protocol, but staying that way long term forever, where you're so afraid of eating foods and eating certain things that really, you shouldn't be. Like, again, corn tortillas. I love corn. Siete corn tortillas. I cannot imagine. I'm Hispanic too. Like, I can't imagine. But I say all that because when you implement nutritional changes, you should be able to diversify. And I also want you to understand that healing comes from the inside. And another example, like, your car needs gas to get from point A to point B. From point A to point B, you got to have a full tank. You're only, filling up the tank halfway, you're not going to get there. It's going to be a struggle and eventually your car is going to break down. You need fuel. You need that nourishment, that nutrition to get you through your day, to handle all your stressors. And on top of that, for a lot of you guys to heal, to rebalance, to get that metabolism up. And if you are eliminating, if you're restrictive, if you're chronically in the same way of eating, you're just gonna start breaking down. And the thing is, our food is even much more than that. It's not just fuel, especially when it comes to protein and amino acids. Those are building blocks. That's DNA. That is your ability to make muscle, your ability to help your brain, to help your heart. Like, so food has power, it has information, it has data, it has influence, but the body is what takes that and does exactly what it needs. Right. So when it comes to Hashimoto's, there is a lot. What's really interesting is especially the longer I helped women, the more I realized like a majority of the women that was able to get their Hashimoto's like down was able to see significant changes in their thyroid hormones. It wasn't nutrition. Nutrition was a first part, but it was something more, whether it was emotional, whether it was physical, whether it was their spine and their nervous system. There was always something more. And, it's kind of nice for women to realize that worked with me throughout the years because a lot of them were so restrictive. And I'm like, back off with the intensive working out, back off with all this restriction. Let's do gut healing. We need to reset your adrenals. And when they were able to kind of address the other stressor, the actual stressor that was triggering their autoimmunity, it wasn't a fight with food anymore. It wasn't this overwhelming thing with food anymore. So when it comes to thyroid antibodies, when it comes to eating a certain way, and guys, you don't have to believe me. I have women that have stopped coaching with me through the years. Um, because I was concerned that they weren't eating enough. But they're scared. They're scared they're going to gain weight. They're scared that things are going to go wrong, and that's okay. If you choose to eat the same way or keep on going down that path, it's your decision. But I know what can help women get well when it comes to their hormones. I'm good at that. So when I tell you that matters, being well nourished, healing the gut, detoxing, healing the HPA axis, when I tell you that is so powerful, it is. And nutrition isn't our enemy, and food isn't good or bad, right? My next podcast episode that I'm going to be releasing is kind of talking more about nutrition. It's not good or bad. It's either nourishing, it's not nourishing, it's moving you towards a goal or it's not. And even if it's not, like, you know what, my kids, I don't teach my kids that sugar is bad. I say a lot of sugar is hard on your body. Plain and simple. A lot of sugar is hard on your body. We were meant to have all that, right? So I want you to start looking at food not as your enemy or something that's frustrating and overwhelming. Start looking at food as nourishment, as fuel, as data, information, and building blocks on your healing journey. So when it comes to Hashimoto's, when it comes to thyroid antibodies, the goal is you should know what those numbers are. You should retest those numbers every 90 days if you're doing a protocol. But there are some really powerful things like glutathione and amino acids and minerals that can be really great, powerful antioxidants, really great immune modulators that can help with that. Just going gluten free is probably not going to be enough. Not in this day and age. Now, with the overwhelming stress that we're under from toxins, from food items, from all these things, that's the first step, but you got to go deeper, right? Know what those numbers are. If you don't know what your thyroid antibodies are and you have hypothyroidism, if that's what you've got, which is a majority of hypothyroid cases, you need to know. And you need to know if it's getting worse, if it's staying the same, or if it's getting better. You've got to address those things. Okay. So the next thing I want to touch on. So another thing I think will be really important is going to be testing other things as well. So I think it'll be a complete wellness panel and actual sex hormone testing done correctly. So we're not this separate system, right? I think when we go and we get labs done, we're not, if you're not going in there and you're familiar with it, you're going to get kind of like pretty basic labs that if there is something serious going on, like, life threatening, they're going to catch it on that. But if you want to know about increasing quality of life and increasing your healing and balance and those types of things, we got to get a complete wellness panel, right? And I say all that, like, let me give you an example. I find a lot of women are iron deficient. A lot of women with thyroid hormone, a post-thyroidectomy, high reverse T3 are iron deficient. Now that's a problem. We're talking about if you don't have enough iron, you're not transporting oxygen to the cells, to the tissue. You're increasing your chances of inflammation. And the thing is, like, iron deficiency can cause a lot of the same symptoms as like hypothyroid, right? Like, you can have hair loss, you can brain fog, fatigue, you can even have heart palpitations and all these different things. And so sometimes for a lot of women, their hormones are getting better, but they have this iron deficiency issue. Maybe I find a lot of women don't eat enough protein. Depending on how, what's going on with your ferritin, what's going on with your actual iron panel, your B12, your B9, methylation, I will recommend women eat more protein, eat more meat, especially good, healthy quality, organic, free range meat. And I can see those levels go up. Some other women have heavy, periods. Some have gut issues where the absorption is not good, or infections in their body where the body's trying to store iron into ferritin so they don't have a lot in circulation. And that's important to know because if you have these deficiencies, these issues that not only are going to add in symptoms, but they're affecting not only how you feel, but how you heal, you want to know that. And so even I have some people that are like, will get there, finally get their thyroid panel, but they don't know what their B12 is. A lot of women with low B12, under 300, under 400. I have found high C-reactive protein, blood sugar. Okay, this is a big one. Again, guys, I have a complete wellness ebook, free ebook, drrebeccawarren.com. Get the ebook on there. Um, but the blood sugar one, oh my gosh, so many women with issues of like that metabolic issue that is going unaddressed because usually the doctor will look at just kind of fasting glucose, right? And their fasting glucose doesn't look horrible, like it's in the 90s, but if they look at fasting insulin, which fasting insulin should be pretty, low, because if you're not eating anything, there's no reason to be releasing insulin. I have women, I have found their insulin's 14, 20, 30 fasting. Do you know what that means? Is that you're constantly causing this pancreas to work overtime, this high insulin. You're causing all this inflammation because there's all this glucose that has to be addressed. And eventually, what ends up happening is if you don't test those numbers, those like, I kind of call them like underground numbers, these numbers that are telling you that something's happening. I always like saying like the yellow flags, I'm not waiting until you're out of medical ranges. I'm looking at the things that are going to kick you out of medical range. Let's go ahead and address that before things get worse. Um, and so if you're having this high insulin, that is a major problem that has to be addressed. But a lot of women don't know that. They don't see that because all they have is like a CBC and a CMP. So getting complete thyroid, not complete thyroid, complete labs, your vitamin D, whether you have Hashimoto's, we know in studies that vitamin D is a big, big hormone. D has a big influence on our immune system. We know it can be involved in that Th1, Th2 imbalance that comes with Hashimoto's, right? With a thyroid autoimmune issue or an overall body autoimmune issue. Knowing those levels are absolutely important. I do the CBC, I see CMP, right? These are B12, B9. I talked about that methylation through homocysteine. This is important because when I start working with women, I I I try to identify what are the things that are keeping you drowning, right? Like what are the things, especially the easier things that we can just kind of get your head above water so you can get some clarity. You can get kind of like a shift to encourage you to keep going, right? To go deeper with your healing journey or your prevention journey. A lot of you guys just don't want to get worse or want to avoid things that are, have happened in your family. But there's some deficiencies that I can address right off the bat. And you already have, my gosh, like you start to feel better. And that's important to know and address because these numbers being off and not just out of medical range, there's functional ranges. You can be within range and have all the symptoms that are showing that this is wrong. So getting full thyroid panel. Uh, I keep saying thyroid panel. I talk about that so much that it's just comes like just rolls off. A complete wellness panel. Complete, not just thyroid. Now, let me go ahead and say this. What if your doctor doesn't like want to order the labs you need? Few choices. You fire them, find someone new. Just don't go back. Find someone else who's going to do it, right? Or you can order the labs yourself. If you go to my website on the drop down menu, I have like labs and testing. You have a few different options on there. But honestly, there's some companies, great companies that I did this when I was a patient. I'll be I would order labs myself before I became a doctor. You can do it. You can go on there and look under like self-ordering your own lab. So like if you're missing a reverse T3, if you're missing a free T3 or T3, you can go get that yourself. You can listen to my thyroid episode. I think it's like the second or fourth episode where I talk about like what to look for when it comes to thyroid hormones. I also do a thyroid deep dive. You can do it all yourself. You never have to meet with me, see me, do anything. You can look at that, kind of get informed, know what to ask your doctor, but you can do that. You can order your own lab. So there are more options in this day and age. Not getting the labs you need, complete labs, your vitamin D, your B12, your B9, your iron, your ferritin, all C reactive protein. We can't do that. Ladies, we deserve to be well. We deserve to feel well. And looking at some labs is a good place to start, right? The labs doesn't always, give you all the answers, but it's a very, very good place to start for a majority of the people that work with me and listen to this podcast or watch me on YouTube. So now when it comes to sex hormone testing, oh my gosh, cycling women. The craziest thing is that like I'll have women that bring me in estrogen and like they just get blood work done and they didn't even know where they were in their cycle, whether they were in a follicular phase, whether they were ovulating, whether in the luteal phase, which is crazy. And I think is a testament to how the medical system historically just kind of disregards women's sex hormones as just like just baby making hormones, but our sex hormones, there's ebbs and flows. There's highs and there's lows that are natural. There's periods where this one's going to be higher, periods where this one's going to be lower. And understanding when we're testing and testing at the right time can have a really big freaking impact on our results and on the information we're able to gather. So, year after year after year, when I first started practicing, I would just get women that would bring me labs and they're like, oh, I don't know, but my doctor says it's fine because it's within range. And then we retest 5 to 7 days post ovulation. We retest estradiol, progesterone. We can see progesterone is too low in the luteal phase and estradiol is too high, and they have estrogen dominance. And that's why they're feeling X, Y, and Z. You need to get, especially when it comes to our sex hormones, testing done at the right time. Now, if you've listened to any of my teachings, you know I'm a huge fan of Dutch testing. I'm a geek about it. I think it's amazing. I think it's beautiful. I think it's one of the most powerful tools you have as a woman to test your hormones. It is amazing. It is, it changed my life. It changed a lot of the lives of the women that I've worked with. It's a beautiful test to do yearly or every 2 years to keep an eye on not just like your hormones, but your elimination, your methylation, your adrenals, your HPA. I mean, it's just amazing. Again, go to drrebeccawarren.com, go to labs testing if you want to read more about it. I love it. But if you're going to get blood work done because you want to know what's going on with your sex hormones, first of all, cortisol blood work, not accurate. Nope. Again, cortisol has a pattern throughout the day. If you get a morning reading, it doesn't tell you what's happening at 3, doesn't tell you what's happening right then and there. That's why the best way to test cortisol is through saliva, 24-hour, looking at the full cycle to see what's going on throughout your day, as well as cortisol and cortisone. Now, when it comes to sex hormones, if you are going to get blood work done, you need to do it post ovulation, the luteal phase. And it's important to do a certain amount of days, like I said, 5 to 7 days post ovulation, because in the luteal phase, you'll get a spike of estrogen with, higher levels of progesterone. So you can get a good amount of both of those hormones to check, right? FSH, LH are usually about day 3. You want to test those. Testosterone. Usually you have a higher amount of testosterone pre-ovulation. But when you do get testosterone tested, you want it tested in the morning. These are things that your OBGYN should be talking to you about. Your your OBGYN should be talking to you about how sex hormones, your menstrual cycle, day one bleed until day one bleed is a vital sign. Lots of data there, a lot of information. There's a lot of fear about, fertility awareness, right? Understanding your fertile signs. And I understand there's a lot of fear of, I came across a discussion board where people are like, oh no, don't do, like not all women can do fertility awareness, like being aware of these fertile signs. A lot of women are scared that's how you get pregnant. Well, yeah, because number one, we're not taught, we're not educated, we're not in tune because we're not taught that from our doctors, a majority of those doctors. The second reason is because a lot of us had hormone issues. We have sex hormone issues. We have PCOS, endometriosis. We have estrogen dominance, low progesterone, and the doctors are just like birth control or nothing. So we're left to kind of fend for ourselves with all these sex hormone issues. And of course, it's scary to think that you don't need to take birth control, that you can kind of figure this out when you don't have any guidance on how to get well in that sense. And so getting proper testing done at the right time is important. Getting complete labs are important. And I cannot stress this enough. You can't get well. You cannot get well if, especially when it comes to thyroid hormones, if you can't identify these areas, if you cannot identify these things, if you cannot say this is what's going on. My T4 is high, my T3 is low, my TSH is suppressed because I'm taking thyroid meds, but my high reverse T3 means I'm under a lot of stress. Like, I don't need you guys to be experts on all of this next week in the next 30 days. But the more you expose yourself, the more you speak up, the more educated you are on these things, the better you'll get over time. This is what it was for me. Even through, becoming a doctor of chiropractic, like that's so I was like, I had years before I went to schooling, but even while I was in schooling, I still had to advocate for myself. I knew information. I would walk in to the doctor. I'll never forget this nurse practitioner, and she didn't really like that I had moved, and she didn't really like that I was asking for certain things. And I don't like to go in and like tell people like, oh, this is my background. Oh, you don't like, I go in just to kind of test the waters. And she was like, oh no, like you don't need this or that. I'm like, well, you know what? I would like that. And I would like to get complete thyroid labs. And I think this is what needs to happen. She was like, okay, well, we'll try that. And things got significantly better. And when I went back, she looked, oh, okay, yeah. See, I knew that's why we did that. Like, I knew that would work. And I'm looking at her like, no, you didn't. I had to tell you. I had to push to get this type of care. And it sucks that that has to happen, but that's what has to happen, right? These are some kind of important things to start discussing, especially women within our medical system, is that, we got to speak up. And, there's a Dr. Brad Boots Taylor who, an incredible doctor. I have friends that have birthed with him and um, that gave birth with him in Atlanta. And he's advocated for women and empowering women's voices. And one time I was hosting him and in this discussion group, and he shared how, one thing he noticed was like what he found is that women, they would be knowledgeable and educated. Like, this is a man that has decades, right, of experience and education. And he's like, I would have these women that they were well educated. They knew, they understood. But they would go into their doctor's office ready to make these informed share. He's the one who introduced me shared decision making, right? And they would go in ready to make these decisions together, and they would just leave without getting what they were asking for, without being able to ask the questions they needed. And he was like, and it was that just blew my mind because these women deserved to have the conversations that they went in there for. That's what it should be. You go in and together you come together to get the best care possible. Now, listen, I will say this. Don't expect more from your doctors than what's in their toolbox. I'm going to wrap up with this. You guys want them to work miracles sometimes, right? You want them to do all the nutritional stuff, all this other stuff. I mean, your doctor talking about nutrition. I mean, what they take a 2 week, I don't know, like class on this. I mean, what you're going in there for is what they're good at. A lot of people go into their surgeon asking for questions about prevention. That's not what they're good at. They're good at what they're good at. So go in there being knowledgeable and understanding that this is their toolbox. You come with your knowledge and together utilize their tools to help you get better. And what that means in the thyroid world is if you need thyroid meds, okay, get on it. If you have a thyroid, the goal should be how do I not become dependent on this? That should be the goal, right? But if you don't have a thyroid, the goal should be then how do I find the right thyroid med, the right type, the right dose, so that I'm not just getting by, that I'm actually healing and functional and well. And you've got to understand that. Now, outside of that, that's why you have all these functional practitioners doing what they do. That's why I do what I do. That's what sets me apart as a functional practitioner. I'm not prescribing medication. I don't want to prescribe medication. That's not what I do. What I do is I look at your body as a whole, and then we go down the path of what does healing look like through your lifestyle changes? What needs to be addressed? What can we do to prevent things? What can we do to make things better? But, within that medical system, whether the doctor wants to do it or not, the system as a whole unfortunately isn't created for that. And that's why you're also seeing a lot of medical doctors leaving the insurance, leaving that system. They're kind of going into more membership because they can have more control on lifestyle than just kind of like you being a number, you getting a script, sending you on your way, and you have all these symptoms. So that's what we need to talk about. That's what you have to start shifting in your thinking is don't be a victim, right? Don't be a victim anymore. I was a victim for years. I was always so sad about what happened to me. I was always so sad that I didn't really get informed consent. I felt like I could never get better and I was stuck. You have to feel empowered and understand that you are the expert on your health and that when you have good providers on your side, good prescribing provider, when you have a good functional practitioner like myself on your side, you can achieve some incredible things. You can get older and get better. The years can pass and you can heal better, feel better, move better, be better as you age. But you've got to start by taking that responsibility, by asking and maybe even demanding sometimes for the things that are going to help you get better, prevent disease, function, heal, feel, think better, and start moving towards healing and understanding that healing isn't going to be a destination. We peel away the layers. Every layer is something different. Some layers you're not doing very much. You're kind of resting, resetting. Others are going to require more of you. But if you live differently than everyone else, when you live that way, you're living differently than everyone else, you get different results than everyone else. And that's always worth it. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to leave a 5-star review. I love being able to see and read how this information is helping you on your health journey. And make sure to subscribe to the podcast. That way, when new episodes are live, you can have it automatically downloaded to wherever you listen to your podcast. The number one question I get asked is, how do I work with you? If you are interested in finding out more information about me and being a part of my community, go to my website, drrebeccawarren.com. That's dr.rebeccawarren.com. And you should be able to find the answer to your questions there, as well as checking out my Thyroid Inner Circle membership group, getting access to the free Thyroid Labs ebook that I have available for you, and so much more great information.